In this episode of r/Entitled Parents, I have the conclusion of yesterday's Entitled Parents story. All about two entitled parents who pretty much forgot and chose to ignore their own child's birthday for 8 years. If you haven't yet seen that, you need to go and watch that first for this to make sense, as we're going to go straight into it. Link is down in the top of the description, pinned comment, and behind the I button right now. Without further ado though, here we go. My mother broke down again and tried to come closer to me while crying my name and apologizing, but I refused to let her anywhere near me, and half the family body blocked her from getting close. I just said I couldn't take this anymore and started to walk away. One of my aunts chased me down and brought me back. I could hear multiple family members yelling and cussing at my parents over what happened, but I was so upset I couldn't even feel happy for any bit of justice after all this time. Also, where was my sister when this was all going on? Well, she was still in the restaurant all by herself, eating cake and ripping open presents that were there for me. And if anyone was wondering, yes, my parents served her some cake after I cried and walked out. You'd think doing that wouldn't be their primary focus in the moment, but they were called out on it later. My grandparents got me to calm down and sit in their old minivan while everyone else cleared out the party. My sister threw a huge tantrum after being caught opening my presents, one of which was a brand new smartphone that she threw against the wall and broke because she wasn't allowed to keep it. She literally just got a brand new phone on her own birthday a few months earlier. I ended up being so upset that I was ranting that I never wanted to celebrate my birthday again, and my grandparents let me stay the night over at their house. When I came home, I still didn't speak to my parents. My mother just kept crying because I wouldn't talk to her, and my father was as closed-mouthed as me. The following weekend, my grandparents convinced me to go with them out to dinner, and when we got there, I was surprised to find a whole new party waiting for me. My parents were there, and they kept up with having the "don't hate us" smiles on their faces almost the entire time. There was a big chocolate cake with 18 candles on it, and there was even a banner with my name. They called it my happy belated birthday graduation party because I didn't really get either this year. I did kind of have to pretend to be happy. One good party though doesn't undo 8 years of favoritism or even make a dent in it really. And where was my sister? She was sitting at the table with her arms folded and her lip curled because it wasn't all about her like it used to be. And rather than saying happy birthday for me, they just sang an altered version called Happy Day. Then as soon as I blew out the candles, my sister screamed. I mean, an ear-bleedingly loud little girl scream. My parents had to rush her out and then bring her back in later looking more upset than ever. She quietly pouted in her seat for the rest of the party. I did still get a new smartphone as well, and my sister got hers taken away, among other things for what she did at the prior party. But the smartphone wasn't all. The whole family had chipped in and gotten me a car. It was just an old white Volvo, but I loved it the moment I laid eyes on it. My grandfather knows a thing or two about cars and fixed it up himself. I was so happy, but my sister clearly was not because she let out another one of those screams. She started having a massive tantrum and demanding a car too. Sorry, she's 8 years old and she's demanding a car. How does that make any sense? My mother had to take her into the bathroom and they didn't come back out for a while. My father just went back to looking defeated. My sister had effectively ruined their attempt at trying to look good in front of the whole family. Multiple family members also had strong words to my parents that my sister was acting that way because they raised her to be a princess spoiled brat. I obviously started driving the car around right away, but only days later, my sister actually vandalized the car by taking a hammer and breaking 2 of the side windows and cracking the windshield to the point the car was undrivable. My parents managed to stop her before she did any more damage, but she screamed bloody murder when they grabbed her and took the hammer away, then tried to bite them. Oh, everyone was furious with my sister, especially my grandparents, because my grandfather had put so much work into that car, and my sister ruined it while having a massive tantrum. My parents had spoiled my sister so badly that she couldn't mentally comprehend that I could have something she couldn't, and several other family members laid into my parents about how they were setting my sister up for failure by making her an entitled brat that expects the world to be given to her. She's going to have a terrible adult life because they won't put their feet down and teach her some respect. Well, her actions didn't go unpunished. My sister was grounded for the rest of the summer, and effective of the new school year, was sent to boarding school. My mother cried like a baby about it too, but my father had to be adamant that it was the only way to start undoing the damage they'd done. Yes, they fully acknowledged that they are at fault. It was kind of hard for them not to, since no one sided with them at all. My sister is absolutely miserable at that school. She hates the clothes, the rules, and she's been lying almost constantly. But with cameras almost everywhere now, she's not getting away with any of it. Our parents tried to visit her a few times, but she just screamed at them for putting her in that place. From what I hear, this may be her school life until she's 18 years old. My parents did pay to fix my car. They had an auto glass company replace the windows and windshield, and it looks just as it did before. In August, my grandfather came to me and said if I was interested, he found me a job working for a friend. but it was 40 miles away. So I'd need to move out of my parents' house unless I wanted that commute. I was all for moving. Finding a first apartment wasn't so easy though. I had to get approved for a credit card just to get accepted for a studio. But I got it, and I've been living where I am now since September. My parents keep trying to contact me, but I rarely speak to them. Anytime we do speak, I just feel awkward and uncomfortable. My grandfather has suggested that they simply don't want to acknowledge how badly they failed as parents, and trying to get me to forgive them will make them feel better about themselves, or something like that. But I'm not going to forgive, not anytime soon. I'm finally happy and away from them. Now they've got nothing. They don't have me, they don't have my sister, and my parents had to take more hours at work because boarding school for my sister is not cheap. Nor can I imagine was the party they had to throw for me or the repairs to my car. Empty house, angry relatives, and the only thing they have left is their work. Feels like incredible misery to me, and I don't take delight in it, but it is the result of their own actions after all. And there we are, that is the end of that truly tragic tale. You know what's so sad is that I actually don't think they've learned. Even after all of this, I think, as you say, OP, it's all for show. Ultimately, whatever they do can never really, help you accept all those years of hurt that you went through, of just being ostracized and completely ignored in place of your sister. But still, they're not even doing enough now to even, show that much of an apology, I don't really feel. Good on you for getting away from these people at last, because these are barely even your parents. I don't understand why your sister has been so much more heavily favored than you. I can't quite work it out. Maybe it is the way that she came into this world and how scary that must have been and how thankful your parents were that she made it. But that's not important. Well, I mean, at the time it is, don't get me wrong, but now it's not. You have 2 children. But you act as if you only have 1. And the truth is, it's not even going to benefit, as your grandparents are saying, it's not even going to benefit your younger sister in the long run, because as you can see, she's just becoming a horrible, horrible young lady, right? That's what's going to happen. She has to be taught at some point. Thank God that she's gone to boarding school, and even though she hates it right now, eventually she will understand how important it was for her life. Terrible parents. Also, your family are pretty terrible for not getting in the mixer earlier and noticing what was going on. Overall, very sad story. At least the ending is positive though. My entitled and now psychopathic father and his even more deranged wife, my stepmother, demand to know where I live now that I've moved out from home. As the title suggests, my mum and dad are divorced since I was 4 and my sister was 6, and we're 18 and 20 now. It was simply the way life was. Split Christmas and alternating weekends. Over time, me, and to a lesser extent my sister, wanted to spend less and less time with our dad and his new girlfriend, the woman my father had a year-long affair with when I was 3 that ultimately led to the divorce. It got to the point that the little time we would spend with our dad, I hated more and more. We'd often fight and would be ended by my dad and his girlfriend ganging up on me and saying, "It's 2 against 1, you lose." Bearing in mind, I was between 7 and 10 years old when this was a thing. When I was around 10, I may have been as old as 11, I started refusing to go. I simply wouldn't leave the house to go to my dad, so I remained. And my sister, who was as old as 13, went still. Apparently they told my mum via text that she'd raised a nasty little fat, ugly, R-slur word idiot. The R-slur word part was because of a recent autism diagnosis that my dad had decided was entirely mine and my mum's fault. Fast forward about 2 years, and we are now at a point where me and my sister no longer spend the night at my dad's, since I refused to go consistently and freaked my sister out by telling everyone I was going to take my pocket money and buy a train ticket home. This is all in the confines of London, so trains everywhere are 24/7 pretty much, but it's also not the safest at night, especially for a 12-year-old alone. So, my mum fought with my dad over this, and we never spent nights again, at the genuine risk that I would run away, even though my dad refused to acknowledge that. But he agreed following some comments targeted at me over text, since I now had a phone so he could say them to me personally, once again calling me fat, short, ugly, and that R word, among other things such as infantile. I was 12, and a genuine disappointment of a child. By this point, I wanted not to go to my dad's at all, and I wouldn't have were it not mandated by the divorce agreements that my dad would not yield any further until I personally decided at 14, about 18 months from this point. There are plenty more stories and behaviours regarding my dad and his new wife that aren't relevant to this, but I'm happy to talk more about them depending on how much interest this gets. But the situation referenced in the title is regarding my move to university accommodation from my home with my mother. For some extra context, I'd scarcely spoken to my father's side of the family whatsoever, apart from when I was required to visit, and my dad's right-wing extremist parents would visit too, as such a wonderful surprise. Now, I've not visited since 2017, and contact by me has been almost nothing. Entirely my choice to not visit, but I did have to maintain some kind of communication with him until I was 18, and he no longer paid any money to my mum to fund me. Once I turned 18, it was lights out for the relationship. My dad and stepmom blocked on everything and their numbers deleted. 6 months later, my dad was made aware accidentally by my sister that I was moving away, but I didn't allow her to say where. All possible avenues of communication were exhausted by him, including hijacking my chess.com account from years ago, which he somehow remembered the login for, and added himself as a friend on my account to message me and try and find out where I lived, including hanging around my mum's house and most recently harassing my sister too, messaging and turning up to her own university halls to get it out of her. She still reluctantly refused. He's since threatened members of my mum's extended family on Facebook to find out where I am, claiming he has a right to know where I am, and I feel so guilty and responsible. I want nothing more than to be freed of the pair of them. The stepmother is worse by a large margin. My sister has elected to keep up our relationship with the pair of them, and that is her choice. She was always the favourite of theirs, or at least not called slurs by them. I can't help but sometimes feel I'm in the wrong for refusing to make amends and spend the time with him that he believes he has the right to. I tell you what, going on your chess.com account, hacking into your chess account, and messaging and adding yourself, I've never heard of that. And I have a chess.com account. So that is troubled me to my very core. Can you imagine that? Someone going on your account that you play a game on, adding you and then messaging you, not for a little classical game of chess, but no. By the way, where do you live? Where are you? Very, very odd. I mean, it's pretty obvious from a very early age it had nothing to do with these guys, and I can't blame you for a second. Like, it doesn't even matter that this is your dad. If you hate him and you hate being around him and his new girlfriend, then, you know, I know that like legally you have to because of that's how divorces work and there was some sort of agreement there, but it's really unfair on you because this person is just so horrible. It's just very unlucky that this guy happens to be your dad. The slurs, wow. You have autism and he's calling you the R word, your own dad. That has just blown my mind. Ridiculous. Entitled parent at the playground. I was at the playground with my kids, spelling out my son's name with him using the tan bark off the ground. We were working on the small retaining wall on the outskirts of the playground, far from other people, not in the middle of the playset or anything. We got through his first name and we're working on the second, when a little kid comes by driving his toy truck through the letters. I gave him a smile and asked him not to drive here. He walked away fine and I resumed working with my son. The kid comes our way again, so I put my arm across the space to give a visual barrier and asked him to turn the truck around and drive back the other way. All smiles, the kid was fine doing as requested. Then, a few minutes later, he comes back with a second little kid, and his dad following along as well. The same thing happens, except when he gets to my arm, the barrier in his path, and I ask him to turn and drive the other way, he ignores my request, and instead smashes the truck into the middle of where we're working. I gently but quickly moved his arm away and moved in front of him while telling him, please don't drive your truck here, we're working on something, and you're being rude. The dad explodes. You watch your language. How dare you talk to a child like that? You watch your freaking language. Surprised and starting to shake because this dad is apparently a crazy man, I try to assume the best and say, oh, I was just asking him not to drive here because I'm helping my son write his name with the wood chips. But he doesn't know any better. He's 2. He doesn't know what he's doing. Very confused and unsure of what we're supposed to do at this point, I say, oh, I think he does know. He listened when I asked him before. The guy gets in my face and bellows. You watch your freaking language. There are children at this park. You need to watch your language. Genuinely terrified and confused, I take my now crying son and we leave the park. Only after leaving did I think that calling the police would have been an appropriate course of action. Entitled parents, more like ironic parents. Am I right? Given how much this dad was screaming at you, swearing, telling you not to swear. That wasn't funny, but just allow me, okay? It's a good story. I enjoyed it. What do you think happened here, guys? That's my question to you. Do you think that the kid went over, told the dad what was going on, and he was like, you know what? No, we're not having this. We're going to go back over and destroy that guy's first and second name. Because it seemed like the kid was all right with it at first. But no, a 2-year-old actually can't follow instructions at all, apparently. What a load of bull.